Our last technique, which we will talk about in white box testing, is called loop testing. This technique is used when we have loops in our code. So let's try this code and understand it first. Count equals integer of input, enter your number. So you provide the code with your number and it will be placed in the variable count. Okay, then while count is smaller than 20 and count is greater than 0, this means while the number is between 20 and 0, like 5, 9, 12, print the count is count. So if I write down 5, he will print the count is 5. Okay, then count equals count plus 1. This means that the number that I provided to the code, like 5, will be plus 1, which means 5 plus 1 equals 6. And then he will enter the while loop again because it is still smaller than 20 and greater than 0 until it is 20. So he will skip the loop and print goodbye. So how do we test this code? In loop testing, we can't achieve 100% coverage because this is not easy most of the cases. So the most efficient way to test loop testing is to do these steps. The first step is to skip the entire loop. How do we skip the while loop in this code? So here he says while count is smaller than 20 and greater than 0. So we want a number which is not smaller than 20 and not greater than 0. So we may try 25. And then the second step is to make one pass through the loop. How do we pass through the loop one time? We said that if count is smaller than 20, count is count plus 1. So if count equals 19, 19 will be printed because it is smaller than 20 and greater than 0. But when the number 1 is added to it, it will become 20 and it will skip the loop. So here we pass through the loop one time. Then we want to pass through the loop two times. How do we pass through the loop two times? By using the number 18. 18, it will be printed, then plus 1 is 19, it will be printed, then plus 1, it will be 20, it will not be printed. Then we make a random number of passes through the loop, for example 10. Then we make n minus 1 and n plus 1 passes through the loop. So n means the maximum number of passes that can be made inside the loop, which means 1, 0, and 2. What are these numbers? If we use 1, this is the maximum number of passes. Why? Because 1 is greater than 0, and this will be counted 1, 2, 3 until 19 until 20. For 2, this is n plus 1, which means the second number in the loop, and for 0, which means n minus 1. Here we will skip the loop, but from the other side. This is like boundary value analysis for white box testing. So let's try these test cases. We said that we have 5 steps. The first is to skip the entire loop. So we said that we use, for example, 20, and he skipped the loop and printed goodbye. Then we pass through the loop one time by using 19. He printed the count one time, and then we pass through the loop two times, 18, and then we pass any random number like 10. Here he passed from 10 to 19, and then we pass n minus 1, which means 2. Then we use n, which is 1. Here he passed through the cycle the maximum number of passes, and then we use n plus 1, which is 0. He will not go through the loop and will print goodbye. This means that we made loop testing and this code is okay. But what if we have two loops inside each other, which means that we have a nested loop? So we will change our code count 1 and count 2 equals input enter second number. Okay, and we will change this while loop by for loop for I in range of count 1 for j in range of count 2. This is not a capital letter and this is not a capital letter. What we will do, we will print I and j. Let's remove this line of code, which is goodbye. This is commenting in Python. Okay, this should be like this. Okay, let's run. Enter your number, which is first number. Let's say 2. 2. What happened? Okay, we have two for loops. For I in range of count 1. We said that count 1 equals 2. So I starts from 0 and then 1 and then it stops because once it reaches 2, which is the number I provided to it, it will stop. The same for j, I provided 2, so it will start with 0, 1 and stop. Then it will print I and j. So I is 0 and j is 0, it will be printed. Then in the inner loop, j will be 1, so it prints 0 and 1. Then for the outer loop, I will be 1 and he will start again, so j will be 0 and then j will be 1. Okay, so what should we do? We start with the inner loop, okay? So we do the same we did in loop testing, but in this case we will repeat it for the inner loop and the outer loop. So first let's skip the outer loop. How do we skip the outer loop? By making count 1 0 and any number for count 2. So he skipped the outer loop. Count 1 is 0 and I will start from 0, so it will stop. Then let's execute the first loop one time and skip the second loop, okay, the inner loop. We will say 1 and 0. He skipped because he skipped the inner loop, he will not bring anything. Then what did we say? We execute the inner loop one time, okay? Then the inner loop one time, then 1 and 1. This is one time for the inner loop. Then 2 times, which means 1 and 2. This is 2 times for the inner loop. Then any random number for the inner loop, let's say 1 and 5, okay? And then n minus 1, n, and n plus 1. So what is the value of n minus 1, and n plus 1? Here there is no maximum value for n. It can be infinity. It can be 1 million. So let's try 1 million for example. So we can say count 1 is 1, count 2 is 1 million. What did he say? Oh, no problem. Okay, we will not wait until it reaches million. So we will say restart shell and let's write 1 and this number. Okay, what happened? Overflow error. Okay, the variable j can't stand this value. Why? Because I didn't make a break condition. Okay, so if the user enters a very large number, this error message will happen. So loop testing discovered this error because I tried to execute the loop n times. Maybe the developer wants it this way, or maybe this is an error in the code. So in this case, we should make a break condition. So if we do this, if I is greater than 20 or j is greater than 20, break. Let's try this. If I is greater than 20 or j is greater than 20, break. Error, okay. In Python we write or not like other languages. So this, okay. Enter your number. If I say 40, what happened? You see, after 20, okay, in I, he began the new cycle, but he executed it one time. So what should I do? Let's write this line of code before this line of code, okay, here. Let's run. Let's enter our first number, 40, 30. Here you see that he printed until 20 and 20. Any number after this value will not be printed, okay? But we don't want him to print 20. We want it to be like the previous example where he stopped at 90. So here we write if I greater than 19 or j is greater than 19, break. Let's try this. Okay, 50 and 40. And this is our goal, to stop at 19. So here using loop testing, we solved our problem.